The last breath the night was cold, darker than any night the human had seen in years. The forest was silent. No birds, no insects, only the whisper of the wind moving through dead trees. He walked slowly, careful with every step, his boots pressing against the wet soil. He thought he was alone. But his heart told him something was waiting, something broken, something desperate. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was only a shadow, a piece of cloth thrown on the ground. But when he moved closer, his breath caught. It was a girl. Not human, her body thin, weak, covered in dust and blood. Her skin had strange colors, glowing faintly under the pale moonlight. Her chest moved only a little, almost too weak to be noticed. She was alive, but barely. The human knelt beside her, his hand shaking. Her eyes were closed, her lips slightly open, as if she had whispered her last word before silence took her. He touched her hand, which is ice cold. She was fading, slipping away, leaving this world behind. He felt his throat tighten, his heart beat faster. He knew she did not belong to his kind. But in that moment, none of it mattered. "Stay with me," he whispered. Though she could not hear him, his mind raced. Should he save her? Should he risk his life for a stranger? An alien? He could walk away. No one would know. No one would blame him. But something deep inside refused. He could not leave her to die alone in the dirt. Not like this. He lifted her in his arms. Her body light as a feather. She did not move. Only a soft breath escaped her lips. The forest seemed to close in on him. The trees groaning, the shadows watching. Every sound felt louder now. Every step heavier. He was carrying more than just a body. He was carrying her last chance. The human's thoughts went back to the war. He had seen soldiers die, men and women fall with no one beside them. He remembered their empty eyes, the silence after their final breath, and now this girl was about to join them. Unless he did something, he refused to let it happen again. As he walked, he spoke to her, even though she could not answer. "You don't know me," he said quietly, "but I am not letting you go yet." His voice trembled. "I don't care who you are. I don't care where you came from. You are alive, and that means something." The night grew colder. The weight of her small body pressed against him, but he did not stop. Her breath grew weaker, her chest barely rising. Fear clawed at his heart. What if he was too late? What if she died before he could save her? Her lips moved faintly, as if trying to speak. He leaned closer, desperate to hear. No words came, only a broken breath. It was enough to break him inside. She wanted to live, but her body was too weak. Her spirit was still fighting, but death was stronger. He found a place to rest under the shelter of broken rocks. Laying her down gently, he covered her with his coat. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. Her life hung on a thin thread, ready to snap. The human pressed his hand against her chest, feeling the faint rhythm of her heart. It was slow, almost gone. His eyes burned, his teeth clenched. "Don't you dare leave now," he whispered harshly. "Not when I'm here." The hours passed like years. He held her hand, trying to share his warmth. He gave her water drop by drop, hoping she could swallow. He stayed awake, listening to every tiny sound of her breath. Every pause in her chest made him fear it was the end. But somehow, she kept holding on. He looked at her face, calm yet tired. Her long lashes rested on her cheeks, her lips soft but colorless. She looked like she had already crossed the line between life and death, yet something inside told him she was still fighting. Not for herself, but maybe for a chance, just one chance, at dawn. When the first light of morning touched the sky, he felt her hand twitch weakly in his. His heart leaped. Her lips parted again. A weak sound escaped, like a broken whisper. Her eyes opened only for a moment. They were not human eyes, strange and beautiful, glowing faintly. She looked at him not with fear, not with anger, but with confusion. Then they closed again, heavy, as if the world was too much. Her breath slowed once more. The human shook her gently. No, stay with me, please. But her body stilled. Her chest moved only once, then paused. He froze, terror flooding him. Was this it? Had he failed? The forest was silent again, her face calm, her eyes shut, her body still. The human bowed his head, grief cutting deep into his chest. But then he felt it, a faint breath against his hand. Soft but real. Her heart still beat, weak but steady. Hope flickered inside him like fire. The alien girl had not left yet. She was still here, and as long as she breathed, he would not let death take her away. A risky rescue. The girl's breath was still weak, but it was there. The human pressed his ear close to her chest, listening to the faint beat of her heart. Relief washed over him, but fear came quickly after. She was alive, yes, but for how long? If he stayed here, she would die. If he moved, the dangers outside would find them both. The human stood, tightening his coat around her small frame. He lifted her carefully, her head resting against his shoulder. She felt as light as a child. Too fragile, too close to death. He clenched his jaw. This was no longer a choice. He had decided he would save her. No matter what, the forest was not safe. Shadows moved between the trees. The wind carried sounds, whispers. Footsteps, the distant growl of beasts. Her enemies were still searching. If they discovered she lived, they would not stop until she was gone. The human quickened his pace, his boots crunching softly against the dirt. Every sound felt too loud, every step a risk, but he held her tighter, shielding her with his body. The path ahead twisted like a snake. He remembered an old shelter, a broken cabin left behind by travelers long ago. If he could reach it before dawn, maybe he could hide her. Maybe he could give her a chance. Her breath brushed faintly against his neck, sometimes steady, sometimes fading. It kept him moving, step after step. He whispered to her, though she could not hear. Hold on, just a little longer. You're not leaving me yet. Hours passed. The forest grew darker, heavier. The silence was broken only by her shallow breaths and his quick steps. But then he heard it, the snap of a branch behind him. The human froze, his body stiff. He turned his head slowly, his eyes narrowing. Between the trees, shapes moved, tall and lean, armored in shadows. Hunters, they had found her scent, his. Heart pounded. He held her closer, hiding her face against his chest. He crouched low. Stepping carefully off the path, the hunters' voices carried through the cold air. Strange words in a language he could not understand, but their tone was sharp. Violent, they were searching, and they were close. The human slipped between rocks, moving silently, his breath shallow, his eyes sharp. He could not fight them. Not. With her in his arms, his only hope was to stay unseen. Her body trembled faintly, a weak shiver. He pressed her tighter to his chest, whispering, "Quiet now, please. Don't give us away." Minutes stretched into hours. The hunters passed by, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. One stopped, sniffing the air. The human's hand tightened on the knife at his side. If they came closer, he would fight, even if it meant death, but luck favored him. The hunters moved on, their voices fading into the distance. The human let out a slow breath, his body shaking with relief. The night grew colder. He pushed forward, his strength nearly gone. Every muscle ached, but he refused to stop. The girl stirred faintly, her hand twitching against his chest. Her eyes fluttered open for a second, glowing weakly. She looked at him, confused. Before closing again, it gave him strength. She was fighting, just like him. Finally, he saw it. The cabin old, broken, half buried under vines and branches. But still standing, he pushed the door open with his shoulder, the wood creaking loud in the silence. Inside, dust floated in the cold air. The roof leaked, the walls cracked, but it was shelter. He laid her gently on the floor, covering her with his coat again. Her lips were dry, her skin pale. She was slipping further away. The human searched the cabin quickly. Rusty tools, broken crates, nothing useful. Then he found a tan old flask. He ran outside, filled it with melted snow, and hurried back. Carefully, he tilted it to her lips. A drop of water touched her mouth. At first, nothing. Then slowly, she swallowed. His chest tightened with relief. "Good. That's it. Drink," he whispered. He gave her more, drop by drop, until her breathing grew steadier. The night was not over. Danger still lingered outside. The hunters would return. The beasts would hunt. But inside this broken cabin, for the first time since he found her, he felt a spark of hope. He sat beside her, knife in hand, watching the door. Every sound outside made his muscles tense, but he did not close his eyes. Not even for a second. He had promised her life, and he would keep it. The girl lay still, but her chest rose and fell. Her heart still beat. Her breath, though weak, continued. And for the human, that was enough. He leaned close, whispering again, "You will not die here. Not while I'm alive." The night stretched on, heavy and endless, but inside the cabin, a small fire burned not in the hearth, but in his heart. He had chosen this path, and there was no turning back. He would protect her against hunters, against beasts, against death itself, because in saving her, he had found something he did not know. He had lost the will to keep fighting too. Between life and death, the cabin was silent except for the faint crackle of wind slipping through the broken walls. The human sat beside the alien girl, knife in hand. His eyes heavy, but refusing to close. Every time he looked at her, fear returned. Her chest rose and fell so slowly it seemed death was waiting for the next pause. Her skin was pale, her lips dry, her body still. She was balanced on the edge between life and death, and only a thin thread kept her here. The human leaned close. Listening, her breath rattled faintly in her throat. He pressed his hand against her chest. Yes, her heart was still beating, but weak. So weak, he closed his eyes, whispering, "Stay. Just stay with me. Don't give up now." Outside, the forest groaned. A hunter's call echoed in the distance, deep and sharp. The human tightened. His grip on his knife, his body tense. If they found the cabin, he would not have time to save her. He would have to fight. And fighting meant leaving her unguarded. The thought made his chest ache. He could not protect her and battle them at the same time. He needed her to wake, to give him a sign, anything. He searched the cabin again. Desperate, broken crates, rotten wood, torn cloth, nothing useful. But he found an old blanket in the corner, moth-eaten but still warm enough. He wrapped it around her thin frame. Tucking it close, her body shivered. Faintly under the layers, it gave him hope. If she shivered, it meant she was still fighting. The night stretched long. He fed her water drop by drop. He whispered stories from his home, not knowing if she could hear. He told her about the rivers of his world, the mountains, the blue sky that never turned red like this cursed land. He told her about laughter, about warmth, about how life was more than war and death. "Maybe you'll see it one day," he said quietly. Brushing a strand of hair from her face, her hair was soft, silver like moonlight. Strange yet beautiful. She looked peaceful, as if sleeping, but the peace was heavy, dangerous, too close. To eternal, at dawn, a pale light crept through the broken roof. The human blinked against it, his eyes burning from no rest. He looked at her again, heart pounding. Her breathing stopped for a moment. Silence filled the cabin. He shook her gently, panic rising in his chest. "No, not now. "Don't do this," he begged. He pressed his hand against her chest. Nothing. His own heart dropped. He began pressing harder, forcing her chest to rise. "Breathe." He shouted in a whisper, desperate, "Don't leave me like this." Then her body jolted. A weak gasp escaped her lips. Her chest rose again, slow but real. The human sagged forward, shaking with relief. "You're stubborn, aren't you?" he whispered with a broken smile. "I can live with that." Her eyes fluttered open for only a second. Strange. Glowing eyes that seemed to hold the sky and stars inside them. She looked at him, unfocused, confused, then closed them again. But it was enough. She was still there, trapped between worlds, but not gone. The human's body ached, his throat dry, but his spirit grew stronger. If she could keep fighting, so could he. He built a small fire from scraps of wood. The smoke rising through holes in the roof, the warmth touched her pale cheeks. Bringing a little color back, he sat close, holding her hand. Every now and then, her fingers twitched faintly. It was like she was answering him, though locked away. In her own silent struggle, the day dragged on. The hunters' voices echoed outside again. Closer this time, the human crouched low, pulling his knife, but they passed without entering. Still, the danger grew. He knew he had little time. If she did not recover enough to move soon, they would both die. The thought tore at him. He could not leave her behind, not after coming this far, but if she stayed weak, what chance did they have? He poured more water at her lips. This time, her throat moved, swallowing more than before. He smiled faintly, whispering, "That's it. You're stronger than this." "I know you are." Hours later, when the sun dipped low, she stirred. Her lips moved as if forming a word. The human leaned closer, desperate to hear. No word came, only a broken sound, but it was enough. Her voice weak but alive cut through the silence like a promise. She was not letting go, not yet. He brushed his hand across her forehead, feeling heat. She was burning with fever. His heart twisted, but he forced himself calm. "Good," he whispered. "That means your body is still fighting." Night fell. Again, the human sat at her side, refusing sleep. His eyes never left her. Every breath she took was a battle. Every pause a knife to his chest. He knew this was not the end. Not yet. She was not dying. She was choosing. Fighting, clawing her way back. And he would not let her fight alone. As the moonlight filled the broken cabin, the human whispered once more, "You are between life and death now, but I will hold you here until you choose life." The spark of life. The night dragged on, cold and heavy, but the girl still breathed. The human sat with his back against the broken wall of the cabin, his knife resting on his leg. His eyes burned from exhaustion, but he did not close them. Every sound outside made him tense. The snap of a branch, the howl of some beast, the faint echo of hunters far in the distance. But what made his heart truly race was not the danger outside. It was the fragile life lying on the floor before him. Her skin was pale, her lips cracked, her body weak. Yet in her stillness, there was movement, faint but steady. Her chest rose and fell, slow but sure. It was enough to give him hope. She had been between life and death, and somehow she still fought. At dawn, a soft golden light entered the ruined cabin. The human leaned close, brushing dust from her hair. Her eyelids fluttered, trembling like they were too heavy to lift. Then, for the first time, her eyes opened fully, strange eyes, glowing faintly like stars trapped inside water. She looked at him with confusion, fear, and something else, curiosity. Her lips parted, as if to speak, but only a weak breath escaped. The human froze, his heart thundering. "You're awake?" he whispered, relief flooding his chest. She blinked slowly, her gaze drifting around the room, then back to him. Her body trembled as she tried to move, but she was too weak. Her hand fell limply back to the blanket. He gently placed his hand over hers. Steadying it. Don't move yet, he said softly. Save your strength. Her eyes widened at his voice. It was clear she did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. He was not an enemy. Not a hunter. Not the one who left her to die. Something softened in her gaze. Though fear still lingered at the edges, the human tilted the flask of water to her lips again. This time, she drank more, her throat moving weakly. A small cough escaped, and he quickly lifted her head, helping her breathe. You'll be fine, he whispered, though part of him still doubted. But when she swallowed again, stronger than before, he felt the first spark of victory. Hours passed. She drifted in and out of sleep. But each time her eyes opened, she stayed awake a little longer. She watched him with those strange, glowing eyes. Silent but alert. Once her lips moved, forming a sound in her language, soft and broken. The human did not understand, but he smiled. Keep talking. He said gently, it means you're alive. Outside, danger never left. The hunters' voices still drifted through the forest. Searching, calling. The human's chest tightened each time he heard them. He knew they would not stop until they found her. She was important to them, perhaps a target, perhaps a threat, but to him, she was no longer just a stranger. She was someone he had chosen to protect. That evening, as the fire crackled weakly in the corner, the girl stirred again. Her eyes opened wider this time, focusing directly on him. Her lips trembled as she spoke in a voice softer than a whisper. The words were foreign, but the pain and question in them were clear. She wanted to know why. Why had he saved her? Why had he risked everything for her? The human did not know if she understood him, but he answered anyway, because no one should. Die alone, he said quietly. Not you, not anyone. She stared at him, her strange eyes shimmering with something he could not name. For a long moment, silence filled the cabin. It was not the silence of death, but the silence of understanding. She closed her eyes again, but this time not from weakness. It was rest, true rest. Her breathing steadied, her chest rising and falling in rhythm. The human sat back, feeling relief sweep through him. The spark of life inside her was growing. He could see it, feel it, and it gave him strength too. Night came again. The human listened to the sounds outside, the forest alive with danger. But inside, the air felt different. The cabin no longer felt like a grave. It felt like a place where life had returned. He watched her sleep, her face calm, no longer twisted by pain. And for the first time since he found her, he allowed himself to breathe deeply, still. He knew this was only the beginning. She was alive, yes, but the world outside would not forgive that. Her enemies would keep searching. Her body would take time to heal. The battle for her survival was not over. But tonight, he allowed himself one thought. One fragile hope. The human whispered into the silence, his voice low but firm. You are alive. And tomorrow you will be stronger. I promise. The girl stirred faintly, her lips moving. A sound came soft, almost like a sigh, but it carried warmth. The human smiled, leaning closer. It was not a word he understood, but it was enough. It was the spark of life, and it was growing. Hunted again, the forest never slept, even when the girl's breathing grew steadier and the spark of life began to shine in her. Danger never left. The human knew it was only a matter of time before the hunters returned. He could feel it in the silence of the trees, in the way the air grew tense. The world itself seemed to warn him they are coming. The girl stirred weakly, her eyes opening for short moments. She was stronger than before, but still far too fragile. She could not walk, could barely sit up. He gave her water, fed her tiny pieces of dried root he had found. She tried to chew, her body trembling, but she did not give up. Her will to live burned brighter now, and he saw it in her eyes. But then, as the night fell once more. He heard it, voices sharp, cruel, echoing through the forest. The hunters closer than ever before. The human's grip on his knife tightened, his jaw clenched. They would not stop until they found her. And if they found her here, in this broken cabin, both of them would die. He leaned close to her, whispering, "We must leave. They're coming." She blinked slowly. As if understanding the urgency in his voice, her weak hand clutched his sleeve. Her eyes wide with fear, he nodded firmly. "I'll carry you. I won't let them take you." Without another moment, he lifted her into his arms. She was still light, fragile like glass. Her head rested against his shoulder, her breath warm but weak. He wrapped the blanket tighter around her to hide her glowing eyes. They could not risk the hunters spotting that faint light. Then he stepped into the cold night, moving fast but careful. The forest was alive with sound now, branches snapping, voices calling. Torches flickering between the trees, the hunters were spreading out. Searching every shadow, the human moved low, slipping through the darkness, his ears straining. Each time he heard a branch crack nearby, his heart raced, but he pressed forward. Holding her close, she stirred weakly, whispering something in her own language, though he could not understand. Her tone carried fear. He hushed her gently, his voice calm but urgent. "Quiet now. Trust me." Her hand trembled against his chest, but she obeyed, her lips closing. The path ahead twisted deeper into the woods. He remembered a ravine not far from here, narrow and hidden, if he could reach it. They could disappear for a while, but the hunters were closing in. Their voices grew louder, their footsteps heavier. He crouched low, hiding behind a fallen tree, through the cracks. He saw them, tall figures in dark armor, their eyes glowing faintly. They moved with purpose, sniffing the air. Scanning every shadow, the human's breath slowed, his muscles tense. The girl's body shivered against him. He pressed her closer, whispering silently, "Don't move. Don't breathe loud." The hunters passed only a few steps away. One stopped, tilting his head, sniffing. The human's hand tightened on his knife. If they turned, if they looked down, he would have to fight. His heart thundered, but after a long moment, the hunter moved on. The group vanished deeper into the forest, their voices fading. The human let out a slow breath, his body trembling from the tension. He stood again, moving quickly now. He could not risk being caught again. The girl's eyes opened faintly, confusion in her gaze. He whispered, "We're not safe yet, but we will be." They reached the ravine as the moonlight broke through the clouds. Dark, narrow, hidden beneath vines and roots, the human slid down carefully, holding her close. The ground was damp, the air heavy, but at least it was hidden. He laid her gently against the wall of stone. Covering her with the blanket, her breathing quickened, fear still shaking her. He crouched beside her, whispering softly, "They won't find us here, I promise." But promises were fragile in a world like this. The hunter's voices echoed again, closer than before. The human's jaw clenched, his knife ready. If they discovered the ravine, there would be no escape. He looked at the girl, her glowing eyes, her fragile body, and he knew he would die before letting them take her. Hours passed in silence, the forest alive with the sound of hunters searching. The girl drifted in and out of sleep, her head resting against his arm. Each time she stirred, he whispered gentle words. Even if she did not understand, "You're safe. Stay quiet. I'm here." Her breathing steadied each time. Her trembling eased. She trusted him, even without knowing his name. At last, the hunters' voices grew faint, the sound fading into the distance. The human did not move until the forest was silent again. Only then did he breathe fully, his chest rising with relief. He looked down at the girl, still resting, her lips parted softly. She had survived another night, another hunt. Another brush with death. But he knew this was not the end. They would keep coming. They wanted her alive or dead. And they would not stop. The human's eyes hardened with determination. Then so be it, he thought. If they wanted her, they would have to go through him first. He whispered to her softly as she slept. "You're hunted, but you're not alone. Anymore, I'll fight for you until the very end." The bond forged in fire, the ravine gave them shelter, but not safety. The human knew the hunters would return. And each time they came closer, the girl's fragile body leaned against him. Wrapped in the old blanket, her eyes half open. Her breathing was steadier now, her spirit fighting harder with each passing hour. But still she could not walk. Not. Yet her strength was growing, but danger was growing too. The human sat beside her. Sharpening his knife on a stone, his eyes scanned the forest above, listening for movement. Every sound carried meaning, the distant cry of a bird, the rush of wind through branches, the crack of twigs under heavy steps. He had learned to read them all. Tonight, the forest spoke one truth: they would come again. The girl stirred, her glowing eyes opening slowly. She looked at him, confusion softening into something else, trust. Her lips moved, a faint sound escaping, words in her tongue. The human did not understand, but he leaned close. "I'm here," he whispered. "You're safe with me." Her hand trembled as it reached out, brushing weakly against his arm. For the first time since he found her, she chose to touch him. Not in fear, but in trust. That simple gesture gave him strength. He looked at her and spoke. Though he knew she could not understand, "I'll protect you, no matter what it takes." She blinked slowly, as if his tone told her all she needed to know. But the peace did not last, as the moon climbed higher. The hunters returned. There? Voices carried on the wind, sharper this time. Closer, the human's jaw tightened. His knife ready. He pressed a finger to his lips, urging the girl to stay silent. She nodded faintly. Fear flickering in her glowing eyes, the hunters spread out. Above the ravine, their shadows moving like predators across the rocks. One of them stopped, sniffing the air, the human's muscles coiled, ready to strike if they came down. He could not run, not with her. This time, if they found him, he would fight. The girl must have sensed his decision. Her weak hand clutched his sleeve, her eyes locking onto his. She whispered something in her language, her voice trembling but determined. He did not know the words, but the meaning was clear. She was telling him not to give up, not to leave her behind. He gave a short nod, his heart steady. Moments later, a hunter's torchlight spilled across the ravine. The glow lit the stone walls. Drawing closer, the human stood. Knife in one hand, a jagged rock in the other. His chest rose and fell in deep breaths, his body ready. The hunter's shadow grew larger. The sound of metal scraping echoed in the night. Then the figure dropped down into the ravine, eyes glowing faintly. The human's muscles exploded into motion. He struck fast, the rock slamming into the hunter's helmet. The creature staggered back, growling in pain. The human followed with his knife slashing across its arm. The hunter roared, swinging its blade. But the human ducked, the strike grazing his shoulder. Pain shot through him, hot and sharp. But he did not falter. He pushed forward, driving his knife into the hunter's side. The alien collapsed with a final growl, the torch falling from its hand. The girl gasped, her eyes wide. She had seen death before. She had seen violence, but never like this. This was not cruelty, not hatred, it was survival. The human stood over the fallen hunter, chest heaving, blood on his sleeve. He looked at her, his eyes fierce, but softening when they met hers. "It's over," he whispered. Though they both knew more would come, he grabbed the torch and threw it into the stream at the bottom of the ravine. He crouched beside her, breathing hard. Her trembling hand reached for his. Pressing weakly against his bloody arm, her glowing eyes shone with something new respect, maybe even gratitude. She whispered again in her tongue, and though he could not understand, he felt the bond between them grow stronger. The night stretched on, but the fire inside them burned brighter. The human tightened the bandage around his shoulder. Ignoring the sting, he sat close to her, their hands still touching. They were two beings from different worlds, different blood, different lives. But in this moment, they were the same. Both hunted, both scarred, both refusing to surrender. He leaned close, whispering softly, "We will survive this together." Her eyes closed slowly. But this time with peace, not weakness. Her lips moved faintly, forming one last word before. Sleep claimed her, though he could not understand the way she spoke it. The way her eyes softened before closing told him what it meant. She trusted him fully. The human sat awake, knife in hand. His gaze sharp on the shadows above. He was ready for whatever came, but in his heart, something had already changed. He was no longer just saving her life. They were bound now by fire, by blood, by survival. And nothing in the galaxy would break that bond. A new beginning. The forest was quiet after the fight. But the human knew the silence would not last. The hunters had lost one of their own, and they would return in greater numbers. He could not wait, could not hide any longer. The girl's life was no longer safe in the shadows of the ravine. She needed healing, warmth, and protection that he could not give here. The girl stirred beside him, her glowing eyes opening slowly. She looked at him with exhaustion but also with trust. Her lips moved, a weak whisper in her language. Though he could not understand the words, he understood the meaning. She was asking what now? He brushed a strand of silver hair from her face and whispered back, "We keep moving. We don't stop until you are safe." He lifted her once more. Though his shoulder burned with pain from the wound, she was heavier now. Not from her body, but from the weight of responsibility he carried. Her head rested against his chest, her breath warm, her heart weak but steady. He climbed out of the ravine, moving carefully but quickly. The night air pressed around him, thick with danger. Every step felt like walking on a thin line between life and death. The journey was long. He followed hidden paths, moving when the hunters' voices drifted far. When dawn broke, the trees opened, revealing a valley ahead in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys, small houses clustered together. A village. It was not his home, not his people, but it was shelter, and shelter was hope. The girl stirred, her eyes blinking against the morning light. When she saw the village, she frowned faintly. As if unsure, as if afraid, he whispered softly, "It's all right. They won't hurt you." Though he wasn't certain of that himself, he had to believe it. By the time they reached the edge of the village, the human's legs shook with exhaustion. He staggered, nearly falling, but tightened his grip on her, refusing to let go. Children playing in the fields stopped and stared. Men and women came forward, their faces filled with shock. They saw him, wounded and tired, carrying an alien girl wrapped in rags. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. "Who is she? Why did he bring her? She should be dead." The human ignored them, his voice firm. "She needs help," he said, his tone leaving no room for refusal. Some stepped back in fear, others in anger. But one old woman stepped forward, her eyes kind yet sharp. She looked at the girl, then at him. Without a word, she opened the door of her small house and gestured inside. The human carried the girl in, laying her on a bed for the first time since he found her. The old woman began working quickly, cleaning her wounds, preparing herbs. The girl flinched weakly, her glowing eyes darting to the human. He moved closer, taking her hand, whispering, "It's all right. I'm here." Her trembling stopped, her grip tightening faintly around his fingers. Days passed. The girl's strength slowly returned. Her skin warmed, her eyes brighter. She began to sit up, began to eat, began to whisper more words in her strange tongue. The human stayed by her side through it all. Sometimes she looked at him with eyes full of questions, sometimes with soft gratitude, and though they did not share language, they shared something deeper. A bond forged through survival, trust, and fire. The village still whispered, still doubted, but the human did not care. He had chosen her, and nothing would change that when he walked through the streets. She walked beside him, weak but alive. The villagers stared, but he saw something new in their eyes too. Not only fear-wonder. One evening, as the sun sank, lo, the girl sat beside him outside the house. The sky glowed with red and gold, painting her silver hair with fire. She turned to him, her lips forming slow, careful words. Oh, her voice was quiet, fragile, but this time he understood why. Me, she asked in broken human speech. His heart stopped for a moment at the sound. She had learned his words, even if only a few. He smiled faintly, answering with the same honesty he had spoken since the beginning, because no one deserves to die alone. Her eyes widened, shimmering with unspoken emotion. Tears glimmered faintly as she lowered her gaze. For a long moment, silence lay between them. Then she whispered again, two words clear, soft, and full of meaning. Thank you. The human looked at her, the fragile girl who had closed her eyes to death and opened them to life again. And he realized something: he had not just saved her. She had saved him too, in carrying her, in fighting for her, in refusing to let her die. He had found purpose again, a reason to keep moving, a reason to hope. The hunters never returned. Or perhaps they searched elsewhere, believing her dead. It didn't matter. What mattered was the girl now lived. Her journey was not over, but it had begun anew as the stars filled the sky. She leaned against his shoulder, her voice soft. A new beginning, she whispered, her accent heavy but her words clear. The human nodded, his eyes on the endless night. Yes, he said, a new beginning.